Donald Trump delivered a speech in front of the World Economic Forum. And yes, this is who now represents us in front of such a body in front of the world. And that is tragic. I want to show you moments from his speech, but first let's look at a part of the Q&A. Remember how Trump said over and over and over and over and over again that he could resolve Russia's invasion of Ukraine before even taking office, just as the president-elect. Okay, well, that failed. And then, as he was saying, all of this is Biden's fault because it's happening, that was his thesis. This is all the bloodshed's because of Biden, because if I were president, I could solve it. Now he's president, and he was going to do it within 24 hours of becoming president. That didn't happen. And now he's given up on at least some of his hope about it and is just deferring to Putin. What am I talking about? Here it is. While you watch, please do click the subscribe button if you appreciate this show.
Mr. President, when you're back here in Davos next year, will there be then a peace agreement with Ukraine and Russia by then?
Well, you're going to have to ask Russia. Ukraine is ready to make a deal. Just so you understand, this is a war that should have never started. If I were president, it would never have started.
You're president now. So whatever the mechanisms were that you would have used to prevent it, which don't exist, but you can use them now to stop it. Oh, but Putin, what if, okay, let me take a breath. What if we said over and over again when this comes up? The reason why this continues is not because of Ukraine not wanting peace, which is what people like Marjorie Taylor Greene say and people like Trump allude to, but because Putin, get this, continues the invasion. Choosing to continue the invasion is the war. That's the war. Ukraine's not going to war with Russia because they want to be at war. They're just defending themselves. And Trump now admits a little bit more complicated than what I promised, maybe hundreds of times. I think hundreds of times. Because Putin seems to want to continue the invasion. Yes, that's the problem. So what do we do when Putin wants to continue the invasion? Well, we really only have one option, which is giving aid to Ukraine, because we can't get a peace deal because Putin doesn't want it. And probably the only peace deal he'd accept would be just taking everything. And Ukraine thus has to just keep defending themselves. That's what we've been saying. And before going further, we should have known, and we did, but MAGA didn't, that he was blowing smoke in all sorts of places whenever this was his, yes, I'm playing it again, solution to the conflict.
As you know, I get along very well with Putin. I would tell Putin, gotta settle. I would tell Zelensky, you gotta settle.
Jaden, I thought that was ironclad. What? How does that not work? I thought that wars were solved by telling each side.
Well, with Putin, I would tell Putin, gotta settle.
No, this doesn't solve international conflict.
Putin, gotta settle.
What? But it's so powerful, and he's making a voice.
Putin, gotta settle.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. So because of what he said about Biden, and the war being Biden's fault because he couldn't stop it, and aid being indicative of wanting the war to continue, which is what they accuse us of, when really it's the only thing we can do for the time being, if we care about Ukraine being able to defend themselves. Because what we're seeing here is that Putin wants to do the invasion regardless. So either Ukraine has to defend themselves and can't do it as effectively, or can do it more effectively. This is about preventing death. Now, if Putin were to go, I have a reasonable settlement option, and the United States went, no, we want you to invade Russia and continue forward, now you would have people rooting on war. But right now, the only people rooting on war are the people apologizing for Putin. Then Trump says something horrendous given how much of a lie it is.
That after 4 long years, the United States is strong and sovereign and a beautiful nation once again. It's a strong, sovereign nation. In addition, I'm pleased to report that America is also a free nation once again. On day one, I signed an...
Sorry, let's get to the part I'm talking about in a second, but you know when one of your friends, and by the way, I'm this friend right now, but let's pretend it's somebody else. When one of your friends announces that they're going on a diet, and then like a day later, they start talking about how, you know, being on this diet, it's just made me have a clearer mind, and I feel like I just feel better about myself, and it's taught me that I can be disciplined. And you're like, it's been a day. What are you talking about? What are you... There's no way anything could have changed yet. Again, that's me right now. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's on my mind. I feel so much better after the last 30 hours. And that's what he's doing. He's saying America's back already and everything's great again because of him. How? You can't start touting, and he's been doing this, economic figures 3 days after you get into office. That's not how that works, buddy. All right, here's the big lie.
Executive order to stop all government censorship. No longer will our government label the speech of our own citizens as misinformation or disinformation, which are the favorite words of censors and those who wish to stop the free exchange of ideas and, frankly, progress. We have saved free speech in America, and we've saved it strongly. With another historic executive order this week, I also
We have saved free speech strongly, bigly, powerfully, magnificently. Really? Because just last night, he posted this. MSDNC is even worse than CNN. They shouldn't even have a right to broadcast. Only in America. And this is talking about CNN reportedly set to lay off hundreds of employees as Trump-era restructuring begins. So he's saying, only in America is CNN the one suffering when MSNBC is worse in his mind. But he says, and he's the president of the United States, they shouldn't have the right to broadcast. After saying the government should come down hard on them in a previous post. After saying that they're criminals. After saying that outlets like MSNBC should have licenses revoked and airtime restricted and views punished. People ask me, I'm walking down the street and people walk up and they go, "Sir, why do you hate Trump?" And I say, I don't use such words like hate. And they go, "Okay, why do you think he's so terrible?" I go, "True." And they think it's unfair. They think it's TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Well, if not liking when a president wants to shut down organizations in the media because they do coverage that he doesn't like, if that's derangement syndrome, sign me the up. Okay? And I cannot stand that people admit it. MAGA, just admit it, okay? Then we can have an honest debate about this. Just admit you don't actually like free speech. Just admit it, then we can move forward and talk about it. Because right now, you're lying. And frankly, it's not about you lying to us. It's about you lying to yourself. I think you think that you're for free speech, but you're kind of missing. There's cognitive dissonance because you're okay with him threatening outlets after saying he saved free speech, but planning to pursue policies that restrict free speech. Then do you remember when all of right-wing media flipped out? And I was trying to think of another phrase for flipping out. I already recently used something. What's the thing? Something, a gasket, blew a gasket, caused your wiper fluid to go. I don't know. They're very angry because Biden fist bumped Mohammed bin Salman. I think that was a bad look, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, being the guy who ordered the execution of a U.S. journalist. And so they were really upset, fist bump, "Oh, Biden, you're being a hypocrite." And I think I may have even criticized him for it. But here, Trump doesn't just do a gesture. During COVID times, it was back then. So, fist bump was one of the things we're doing. But he says that Mohammed bin Salman, a murderer, is a terrific guy. Now, I understand we have to have diplomatic relations with Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabian government. I get it. To keep this world spinning, we got to deal with folks across the world, even who have done terrible things. That's different than calling them terrific people. He never seems to call our allies that. Well, Saudi Arabia is technically an ally, but I'm saying he never seems to call leaders that we'd align more on the core principles of that. But he does like to call Mohammed bin Salman, Putin, Xi Jinping, terrific gentlemen.
America in the United States. And it's also reported today in the papers that Saudi Arabia will be investing at least $600 billion in America, but I'll be asking the Crown Prince, who's a fantastic guy, to round it out to around $1 trillion. I think they'll do that because we've been very good to them. And I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down, which frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do before the election. That didn't show a lot of love by them not doing it. I was a little surprised by that. If the price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately. Right now, the price is high enough that war will continue. You got to bring down the oil price. You got to end that war. They should have done it long ago. They're very responsible, actually, to a certain extent for what's taking place. Millions of lives are being lost.
So terrific guy, or I said terrific. I think he called someone else that. Fantastic guy was the actual quote. Apologies. And then doing the thing that Fox hosts and MAGA figures across the country called beta and wimpy and lame and cuck. Maybe not that one. And coward. Yes, coward. Whenever Biden would do it, which is calling upon any other country. Anytime you're asking other countries to increase oil production or lower prices, that's because you don't have good energy policy in the United States. That's what they would say. And I just want to remind you, after this this fantastic guy incident, what they were saying back whenever Biden fist bumped.
In Saudi Arabia, where most of the attention was on the fist bump. And he has, as Pete mentioned earlier, perhaps a legitimate complaint that should not be the highlight of the trip, in which case you would turn to the fact that he only got the Saudis to increase oil production by 3 million barrels, or any other host of, non-accomplishments on this trip. But he is asked, do you regret the fist bump? That is where the attention is. That is the PR victory for the Saudis. So, President Biden, do you have regrets?
Regret the fist bump, Mr. President? Why don't you guys talk about something that matters? I'm happy to answer questions that matter.
You know, to your point, we would talk about something that matters if there was something that mattered on the trip. And you go to Israel, Donald Trump was right on the cusp of another agreement that would have codified the relationship, formalized it between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That could.
Remember, Trump left office having encouraged and facilitated a deal, Saudi Arabia being one of the countries he did this with, to lower oil production, to help the oil companies that were struggling because of how low demand was.
Would have happened on this trip. It did not. There was nothing of significance other than mostly maintaining the views of the Trump administration in Israel and reinforcing a relationship that should remain bipartisan. Then you go to Saudi Arabia and a minor increase in capacity. When you said the trip wasn't about increasing capacity,
but it kind of was.
But it clearly was. So that's the bar that.
By the way, leave this on screen, Jane. I didn't know who this woman was. This is Will Kane. We've seen him. This is Pete Hegseth. And I say this with love and admiration for Carly Shimkus, but they really do have a look there at Fox News with their female anchors. That might be not the most appropriate thing to say, but she looks a lot like Ainsley Earhart. They really have a particular few, check boxes they want for those hosts. It's very interesting. I think we could represent a little bit more, but not the way they roll, I guess. I could have sworn that was Ainsley Earhart. It's not. It's not Ainsley Earhart, in case you were confused. Important stuff. But yeah, so they were making fun of Biden, and often Trump would say he's going and he's begging. He's begging countries like Saudi Arabia because he destroyed our own energy production. You remember that? You remember? As my little sister used to say. Yeah, we remember, Lily. We remember, okay? Long time ago she said that. Don't worry. Then you have this.
With oil prices going down, I'll demand that interest rates drop immediately, and likewise, they should be dropping all over the world. Interest rates should follow us. With oil prices going...
Yeah, I don't... He just always seems so confused about what he's talking about. And guess what? He brought it up again. Yes. I'm always waiting. Because it just really gets at the issues that matter. You know those kitchen table issues politicians always talk about? This is a kitchen table. I can't think of a way to describe this at all humorous, so I'm going to stop trying. It's a true kitchen table issue. What are those little... It's not just it's a lazy Susan issue, okay? It's with it. All right, I tried.
Made it official, an official policy of the United States, that there are only two genders, male and female. And we will have no men participating in women's sports, and transgender operations, which became...
Transgender operations. That's kind of nice. You just fluidly go into the next word. Transgender operations.
Gender operations, which became the rage, will occur very rarely.
Wait, they became the rage? Is that something becoming the rage? I thought it was the rave. No, that's a phrase. I've never heard that before. Is rave even have I been using this wrong the whole time? When something becomes a rave. No, also. Okay, so different ways to say the same thing. Yeah, so he's been saying this a lot about we've brought back only two genders. But just as a quick reminder, technically, if we're getting real down the weeds, I know we always use them interchangeably. Fine, I get it. But technically, you have your biological sex, male, female. And then if you have characteristics that abstract that meaning, like biologically, you have some characteristics of a biological male versus biological female, then that's intersex. So that's the biology, the physical, the body, where the mammal that exists. And then gender, often being synonymous with your gender identity, how one expresses themselves. And that's heavily informed for most people by their biological sex. And then some people don't fall into to that same situation. And we love them. We do. And so when they do this whole, there's 30 billion genders. Yeah, people play around like they will with any thing that's sort of a social construct, relates to identity. People are going to stretch and think and jump outside of the box, but they make it this big whole thing when, yeah, we all get, you have your male and female. Intersex, that's talking about biology. And then with gender, you're man and woman. Almost everyone falls in those two buckets. And then some people say, I don't identify with either or whatever. But trying to blow this into the issue of our time is a little bit silly. It leads you to wondering, what are they distracting us from? Maybe the fact that he's slapping huge tariffs that are going to ruin the economic lives of a lot of Americans. No, but someone identifies as genderqueer. No, don't focus on the prices. That's what's going on, and that's why I'm treating it as the joke that it is. Let's see if there's anything else we missed from this event that was important, because, I mean, now that we've covered genders being back, I don't know what else there could be. Here's a good example. No, let's wrap up the segment, actually. Keep this sucker under 20 minutes. Support the show. Get the members-only bonus show if you appreciate this content by clicking the join button below.